Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and my teammate here is Ashish, and we'll be talking about our project that we conducted in 2018-2019. So I'm sure all of you have received phone calls from an unfamiliar phone number at some point. I actually just received one just a minute ago. How do you really know that the person who is calling you is really who they say they are? So with the influx of unwanted calls nowadays, people are generally confident that they can spot a scam call. But when a sophisticated phone scam occurs, people are still easily deceived. And this is because of this phenomenon, phone phishing, which is the use of social engineering over the phone to access personal or financial information. And some common tactics in order to do so could be using urgency and sympathy, taking advantage of human psychological limitations and biases, or taking advantage of the target's lack of knowledge and legitimate processes. Back in 2018, the FTC's #1 consumer complaint was imposter scams. And of the reports that indicated contact information, 70% was by phone. And the total financial loss from imposter phone scams was $429 million with a median loss of 840. So this really encouraged us to set about figuring out how might we better protect consumers against phone phishing scams. With our first goal in understanding phone phishing and consumer phone behaviors from multiple sources. So we looked at existing cybersecurity literature, consumer anti-phishing resources, talked to victims of imposter phone scams, and so forth. So one of the things that we did was a survey on consumer phone scam attitudes and behaviors, where we sought to learn about people's current mental models of phone scams in terms of their attitudes towards them, knowledge on caller ID spoofing, and protections against phone scams. One of the key findings that we had was that the majority of the respondents to the survey believed that phone scams had a moderate to significant problem in their life, but 72% of the respondents were not using any sort of apps or services to help protect them against phone scams. Another key finding was that although the highest response to the statement, whether or not the call ID on your mobile phone will provide the accurate phone number that is calling you, was the highest response was very untrue. It was concerning to see that 70% of the respondents indicated answers that ranged from somewhat untrue to very untrue. So therefore, there was a concerning number of people who either absolutely do not know about call spoofing or held some uncertainty about it. We also conducted several qualitative interviews with phone scam victims to understand their experiences and how they were manipulated from their perspective. So we really wanted to learn about strategies that attackers use in order to build your trust towards them. And so an interesting finding here was that attackers, during the course of their communication with the target, used a variety of different tactics into getting the target to trust them, such as building sympathy, using sympathy to build rapport. Another tactic was using information that they had on the targets to strengthen their credibility. And this information is either known to the attacker, or it could have been even phished during the course of the engagement. And they use this information as a way to indicate that they have authority to have this information already on the target. And one more key finding from the interviews was that all of the interviewees clearly recalled the exact moment in time when the attacker said something or requested them to do something that triggered them into thinking critically about the situation. So it was really interesting to hear that at that point in time when the person calling them said, you have to go buy a cash card, or something that was just outlandish that ended up kind of lifting up the covers that they had. And so one last key finding here was that all of the interviewees stated that they had never heard of anything so sophisticated like the scams that they had experienced, and they never expected to encounter anything like them. Even though that they knew that phone scams existed, it was really interesting to hear that people seem to be overconfident in their ability to overcome a phone phishing scam before they actually experience them for themselves. So as we were collecting information, we started building out this typical scam call process. And this really helped us into looking for opportunities for intervention to help people be better at detecting a phone scam. So there's a point of time before the call where you can learn about phone scams from a variety of resources or by word of mouth. And there's also the period of time between when your phone actually starts ringing and when you actually pick up the call. There currently are several technical applications to address that point. But however, we found that there weren't any current solutions that address the time from when the call is picked up by the person and when the call ends. And so this is where people are the most susceptible to falling for a phone phishing scam. When the scammer presents a problem, instills panic in the target, then the scammer ends up providing a solution, which involves gathering personal information or financial assets from the target. And we thought that maybe using natural language processing could be a solution to really tackle this point of the scam call process. So this leads to our second goal, which is to explore a real-time imposter phone scam detection application aimed to identify and warn users of phone phishing, with the consideration towards privacy and security. So I'm going to hand it off to Ashish to talk about that approach.
In our approach to NLP, we found in literature that social engineers use authority in almost 80% of the cases to persuade the victim into doing what they want them to do. This gives them quote unquote power over the victim in a given situation. So, if we can detect whether the incoming caller has situational power, it can serve a good indicator for a scam call. Next slide. So next we looked into whether we should use text or speech as a data. So speech data is more personally identifiable because of the voice artifacts in it. So we went with text as it still contains the essence of the conversation in it. Next, we met with considerable modeling challenges because we didn't have access to the right data. Uh, as you can imagine, there is no public data set of phone transcripts available because of privacy concerns. The agencies which had access to these call data couldn't share it because of due to legal and privacy concerns. Then we approached individuals to allow us to collect their personal phone data, but there were a lot of privacy concerns around recording and what we're going to store from the phone calls. So, given the situation, we decided to come up with an approach for data collection instead. The idea was that if we can provide the users with a semi-accurate scan detection model to start with, we can ask some users to donate call transcripts to improve the product. So next, Michelle will talk about the design of this application.
So we're going to talk about Freeline, which is the real-time phone scam detection mobile application. And before really going into that design, just talking about some of the design challenges here. From our user research, potential users really value privacy, as you can imagine, but cybersecurity experts call for better security. So throughout the project, we really butted heads against each other at the question, at what point does the user's need for privacy outweigh the need for protection? So we took on a privacy by design approach to help us in designing this application, taking into consideration where in the user flow we can provide user control, where we can provide consent disclosure so everyone on the call is aware of what's occurring when using the application, and then trying to put any sort of data processing on the client on the phone rather than sending it to external servers. So going into the design, This is the first screen that you'll see displayed. Here you can see that the user has control over turning on the scam detection or leaving it off. And then once the detection is turned on and the call is picked up, here's an audible consent disclosure to inform all parties on the line that the person who is receiving the call is using a screening service that will provide them a transcript of the conversation. And then once the model hits its threshold in scam detection, the user is then alerted of a potential scam through an audible warning and phone vibration. And the screen shows additional information as to why the scam has been detected and what to do with the information. And then finally, after the call ends, the user then has control over reviewing the redacted transcript and seeing exactly what information was processed and choosing whether or not to donate the transcript for improving the model.
So let's talk about the detection process data flow. Uh, when a call starts, the audio will be passed into speech to text through an API, which will be on a remote server, such as by using something like Google Text to Speech API. Next, this transcript will be aggregated on the cell phone, which can then be fed into the situational power-based anti-scam model. We did come up with a anti-scam model using NLP, but that was not really accurate. It had about 60% of accuracy. So as we discussed, we came up with a transcript donation system, which can be used by which can be created by using the aggregated transcript. So the model flows like this. Once the aggregated transcript is created on the phone, it can be used it can be used on the models that uses named entity recognition and regex, etc., to basically remove names, locations, social security numbers, and uh, other things like that, and redact the transcript to create a redacted transcript that can be seen by the user, and then if he chooses or she chooses, can donate it to us to increase our data set. Given all these challenges about data collection, we looked into some possible solutions, such as federated learning. In federated learning, the model is mostly is trained on the device, and the only the weights of the trained model are sent to a remote server, which again uses it to learn. In this way, the actual call data never leaves the device. So this enables us to have still have privacy and still be able to learn in an NLP model. We couldn't get to implementing this model at that time because we were ending the end date of our project. But we believe that our work uncovered a better understanding towards addressing all the challenges in fighting phone scams against consumers. Some post research updates. Recently, as of September 2020, uh, Google released a verified call feature in which is available for all Android phones, by the way, and it shows a verification badge, a person who's calling, and the reason for the call. But this also involves human involvement because the business who's calling has to provide it. This does uh, this does give more confidence in the calling person, so you can pick up the call, but still doesn't use any sophisticated NLP model, etc. Next is we also found that iOS has a silence call feature, which basically silences all incoming calls which are not on your contact list, or the person has not texted you or emailed you with their phone number before. So this also enables people to avoid all the random robocalls that are present, and it also uses third-party applications. So you can have a list or layers of third-party applications that can be used to avoid these scam calls.
Awesome. And then one last thing on the policy end, wanted to talk about how the FCC and FTC have really cracked down on robocalls lately, especially with the public health crisis of COVID-19. So it's very encouraging to see how there are these strong efforts in both the private and public sector to help combat the problem of phone phishing for consumers.